Long-term viewers of this channel should know very, very well by now that I have made it very clear that the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra is one of my all-time favorite smartwatches. There are so many things to like about that watch. I love the dual display. I love the long battery life. It's just all around a solid device, but there are some weak points in it. And I'm pleased to tell you today that most of those weak points have been addressed, if not fully resolved, in the brand new Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5, which I have been using for the last couple of weeks. I guess almost the last few weeks by now. So with the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5, we are seeing a substantial improvement in terms of the internals, jumping up to the brand new Snapdragon W5 Plus. This makes this device absolutely fly. In addition to that, we are getting proper rotating crown navigation, which I'll show you a bit of later. Really, really happy to see that. Dual display is sticking around, as well as really long battery life, fast charging that has absolutely blown me away as well, and a whole slew of other awesome features. Along with all these hardware improvements, we are also making the leap all the way to Wear OS 3.5, which brings it up to parity with the brand new Pixel Watch. Because of this, we are kind of aping the Pixel Watch in a lot of ways. You have that rotating crown. You also have this little side button up top, which will show you your recent apps and do some other things as well. It's a really big change from the TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra, but I think that these changes are quite positive. One interesting change now with these newer versions of Wear OS is that the pairing process is a bit different. For a long time, you would download the Wear OS app from the Play Store and set up your watch with that. Now, there is a brand new Mobvoi Health app that you will need to download. Of course, a little QR code pops up on the watch itself to direct you in that direction. From there, the setup is very, very similar. But again, the Wear OS app itself is no longer required. This is much more like what we have, again, with the Pixel Watch and with some of the more recent Galaxy watches. Now, this new Mobvoi Health app does look remarkably similar to the old Mobvoi app, but there have definitely been some improvements made under the hood. Most notably, data seems to make it from my watch to the app much, much more quickly. I can do a workout or whatever it might be, wake up from sleeping, it comes out of essential mode, I can pull up that app, refresh, and that data is on there. With the old Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 3 Ultra, that was not always the case. Things seemed like they took much longer. You've also got some nice quality of life features. Like, for instance, when you take this watch off, when you need to charge it every 3-ish days, once it's fully charged, you'll get a notification on your phone telling you that it is actually finished charging. Now, on the charging side of things, this thing goes way faster than the old Mobvoi watch did. Even though this thing has a 628 milliamp hour battery, which is quite large for a watch, this thing can get you from 0 to 65% in just 30 minutes. A 15-minute charge should actually get you through an entire day. So using this watch is very, very similar to the Google Pixel Watch, and that's definitely not by coincidence. You've got pretty much the same quick settings up at the top. You've got your notifications down below, which look very similar. And then you have your sort of cycling list of widgets as you scroll through the other direction. Of course, you can long press these and customize them. If I do that or if I do that, it's the exact same interface. Of course, they both also have the rotating dials, which allow you to move through your interface or your list of apps like that. You have the exact same thing over here on the Mobvoi watch. If we click in the crown, there's our apps. We can cycle through them. It's literally the exact same thing. They both even have an additional button on the side that brings up your recents. Although this thing does have a really big feature for me that the Pixel Watch and really very few, if any, other watches actually do have, and that is the dual layer display. It is absolutely awesome. This thing stays on all the time, and because it takes effectively no power to run, it gives you the ability to always be able to see what time it is, see some basic information right there on that always on display that doesn't require an OLED screen being on. If you want to use the OLED screen's version of an always on display, you can do that, but I have no idea why you would. This thing is awesome, and like I said, will really help extend the battery life. All right, so let's look at some of the apps that come with the Mobvoi TicWatch Pro 5, and we'll also take a look at some of the settings therein because some of them are very, very important. Obviously, alarm, calculator, contacts, a lot of these things are very, very straightforward and won't really need any explanation, but some of these will. So essential mode is pretty darn good. Switch to essential mode and then auto switch based on battery level or by schedule. Basically, this switches you into a mode that is only going to be showing the LCD screen. So now you're looking at the OLED screen, but when this does power off, it will switch to that low power LCD screen. And when you're in essential mode, that's the only screen that you're going to get. It's probably very difficult to see because the light's not on it, but that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get notifications. Nothing's going to be going on but the time. And then, of course, all of your tracking, so forth and so on. So this is basically my version of night mode. This is what I use to extend my battery when I am sleeping. It is awesome. I suggest setting it to a time and letting that thing go whenever you are going to sleep. Mobvoi treadmill is an interesting one that will only be applicable to those people who have a Mobvoi treadmill. I actually have one upstairs that they sent to me, and it works quite well. It basically just syncs up to this little treadmill and tracks all of your stuff in an even more accurate way. Pretty slick. We have one tap measurement, which is actually a really smart idea. In one tap, you're going to get blood oxygen, heart rate, respiratory rate, stress, and heart health all in one test that takes about 90 seconds. So tick barometer is this. I think this is actually kind of cool. It's going to read the barometric pressure. And then if you scroll to the right, I think we're going to get the altimeter, which is going to, of course, tell me what altitude I'm sitting at here in the Appalachian Mountains. I should have a relatively high altitude versus sea level. The screen timed out there. Sometimes this one does take a second, but we are, yes, at about 1,000 feet. And then one more swipe will actually let this be tracked 24 hours a day. I don't know why you would want this, but you can if you want to do that. Let's go back home. Tick Care is an interesting one. Basically, you can allow another Mobvoi user to see your data, which, if you need to do that, that might be useful. Tick Compass is quite cool because this thing does have a built-in compass and it works really quite well. So another useful thing to have there. Tick Exercise. This is pretty straightforward, right? You're going to tell it what exercise you are doing, and then it will kick in and start tracking that. You can edit your exercise list a little bit there. There's also a high performance mode, which says it will continuously monitor your GPS location to increase the frequency once activated. You can also set your goals, and then tick motion is how it auto recognizes exercise. And then you can actually go in and tell it what exercises you want it to be auto recognizing. Maybe you do some biking, you might want to turn that one on. Or just turn off tick motion altogether if you don't actually want it always watching, always listening, always trying to determine if you are working out. Personally, I prefer to turn this stuff on manually, to tell it, hey, I'm going for a run. Hey, I'm going to go for a bike ride. Of course, Tick Health is pretty straightforward. This is basically just going to kind of put all of your stuff into one area, track all of your different things all from that screen. Tick Oxygen, also pretty straightforward. This is going to check out your blood oxygen level, but if you scroll down and go to your settings, you can turn off or on 24-hour automatic background monitoring, and then sleep SpO2 monitor. You can change that every hour, real-time monitor, whatever you want to do when you're sleeping. Tick Pulse is, of course, tracking your heart rate, but similarly, there are going to be some things to turn on here. So heart health is one of the things that you can do here, where it's going to be checking for tachycardia, bradycardia, premature heartbeats, and arterial fibrillation. This is basically like their version of, I believe it's called an ECG, like you have on other phones, but it doesn't quite work the same way. You don't get a graph. It just basically seems to tell you if there's something wrong, and in my experience, there has been nothing wrong, so it's not showing me anything. But if you scroll down here to the settings, you can do 24-hour heart rate monitoring, heart health monitoring as well. You can turn that on, so be looking in the background and just watching to see if you have any sort of irregular heartbeats or anything like that going on, and it will then tell you about that in that other screen. I don't think more has anything, and you'll see here where that abnormal record would show up, but there has been nothing abnormal to show there. Under Tick Sleep, of course, this will show you your sleep monitoring, which actually had a phenomenally good night's sleep last night. Let's go into the settings because there's a few things there. You can set a custom sleep cycle, non-tracking time. You can have it check for respiratory rate. as well as sleep temperature. Now, this is something that I've just turned on, and you have to do this for 3 nights before it's actually going to show you. This is basically what you get here. A graph, your sleep stages, which breaks things down. I feel like this is relatively accurate, by the way. Your sleeping heart rate, your blood oxygen, as well as your sleeping respiratory rate. And then there is the skin temperature, which after a few days will begin to register. And it's just going to show you any kind of variation you have on that while you are asleep. You also get data insights like you can see on the screen now. Overall, the sleep tracking on this thing is pretty good. TicZen is supposed to kind of help you calm down. It's going to, I think, track your breathing and things like that. This is not something that I've ever actually really messed around with, but it's supposed to be stress tracking and trying to help you calm down and things like that. 24-hour stress monitoring. I'll turn that on so that I can at least show you guys what it looks like. So the stress tracking stuff, I don't know how this is supposed to work or what it's supposed to be doing, but I don't know. I believe it to be just nonsense. I don't feel like this correlates at all to my actual state. It says I was quite stressed there. I guess that would be about 1 o'clock. But actually, the last couple of days, I've been quite stressed in general. So I'd expect this to be much higher. Maybe I'm hiding my stress level really well, even from my own watch. Personally, the stress tracking stuff is something I would probably just leave turned off. Time show is basically a way to go through different watch faces. Very basic settings there. And then weather, YouTube music, that's pretty much it for the built-in applications. And one thing that does really bug me is the fact that for some reason it uses a 24mm watch band. I have so many 20s, I have several 22s, but 24s are a bit odd. They're harder to come by. I absolutely will need to replace these silicone bands. I do not like silicone. They grab my skin and don't. It's just bad all the way around. I would much rather have some sort of a alpine loop or something like that on here. But finding one at a 24mm might prove to be a bit more difficult. Overall, though, from a hardware perspective, it does feel like a very well-built watch. It is relatively comfortable, although it is on the heavier side. It is a large watch, and you're going to have to contend with that. If you're someone like me who has relatively small wrists, just understand that it might look a little bit odd on your wrist because it is a large watch. Performance has been absolutely fantastic. I don't know that I've seen this thing significantly lag as long as I've been wearing it. Everything is extremely smooth. Notifications come in on time just like you'd expect them to. The tracking has been pretty darn accurate. I put it right up there with any other watch that I have. I have a cheaper Amazfit watch, and it absolutely demolishes those watches in terms of the tracking accuracy. You're going to get a nice accurate set of tracking, whether it's your heart rate. SpO2 is about as accurate as any of them are. Sleep tracking does seem to be very, very good. Like I said, performance, it's rock solid. The W5 Plus processor is a big step up. So let's take a look at the Amazon listing here, which is not yet public. I don't think anybody's actually managed to discover this yet, despite the fact that it's been live for quite some time. This watch is going to retail for $349 in America, and something similar to that everywhere else. You can see here some of the specifications that we have talked about. 80 hours of battery life, 5 ATM water resistance, which is definitely good to have on something like this. It is a 1.43-inch screen. 2 gigs of RAM definitely helps make this thing feel as fast as it is alongside that W5 chipset. 32 gig ROM, which is your storage, which is more than I'm ever going to need on a watch. You can see a comparison here on this table between the W5 Plus and the Wear 4100 platform, and across the board, it is an absolutely massive, massive leap. There's a reason this thing is as fast as it is. Here's a cool thing too, rugged, reliable, and resilient. This thing apparently meets US mil standard 810H, withstanding a variety of stresses, including rain, sand, ice, shock, and vibration. It says it endures it all, no matter what challenges come your way. It definitely feels like a solidly built watch. And overall, I think it is a very, very solid watch. I have very few complaints about this thing. I mean, it is a very large watch, and that might make it less comfortable when you're wearing it for sleep tracking and things like that. But honestly, even that's not been that big of a deal. I do wish I could use some of the watch bands I already own. I wish it wasn't a 24mm watch band, but again, that's not a huge deal. Hopefully some 24mm bands pop up that I do like better than these silicone ones. I do wish that the Mobvoi Health app was a bit more feature-rich. I wish you could dive into the settings of the watch a bit more deeply in that app. There are some things you can do, but not quite as much as you can on something like a Galaxy Watch. I just wish the app was a bit more fleshed out than it currently is. I think it's definitely time for a visual overhaul for it. I think it just looks a little bit dated, but again, the data is there and it is tracking accurately, so it's not that big of a deal. Honestly, the biggest thing I can say about it has nothing to do with this watch, but more about Mobvoi's track record. Of course, I talked about this in a prior video, that there are several of their watches that were premium watches, relatively expensive watches, that have been stranded to some degree. They've not yet received Wear OS 3.0 or 3.5. Now, they've said it's because of the architecture, how those watches were built. They were a bit strange. This watch is not built in nearly as strange of a way, so perhaps that means these software update woes will not follow this watch. However, if you're feeling a bit paranoid or concerned about that, I think that's definitely something that you're reasonably going to be feeling. Overall, for $350, this watch has to stand up against the Pixel watches of the world, against the Galaxy watches of the world. And in my opinion, it absolutely does. There's things that I like better about the Pixel watch, but the battery life, the dual layer display, I think puts this thing over the top for me. There's really nothing the Pixel Watch does that this watch can't do, and this watch can do even more. Now, the Galaxy Watch is a bit more complicated because it synergizes with your Galaxy devices a bit better, whereas this one is more platform agnostic, shall we say. So you're going to lose out on some of that stuff. So you're comparing things like the camera controls and just some of the well-integrated stuff into the Samsung Health app, or some of these other features like perhaps a little bit longer battery and that dual layer display. At the end of the day, it does definitely make a compelling argument for itself. Guys, thanks for watching. Big shout out to Mobvoi for sending this watch out so early before the watch was even announced. It was a lot of fun to get to test. As always, no money changed hands for this review, and Mobvoi is seeing this review at the exact same time as everyone else. I will drop a link in the description down below, which will be to Amazon, which means it is an affiliate link. You can support the channel by clicking that link and then making a purchase. Thanks for doing that ahead of time. Guys, I will see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.